This is the Platinum Podcast.
Welcome to the Platinum Podcast, man.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, I love that. It's like you was just saying, we've kind of met at loads of different social events. You're obviously part of the Yogi Lab crew. You're one of the other members, the most handsome member, I've got to say.
Oh, bro, thank you.
I think
Can you tell that the other three people, please?
I'll let them
Everyone else
know.
on the team?
I mean, they'll see this. They're going to see
Like,
this.
we'll make a skit just out of that.
We can, absolutely. We'll add it to the collection. And we've just never had the opportunity to drop in for some reason. We've just always been like floating around doing a thing. So I'm really happy that we're doing this and just here on the podcast.
Yeah, it's strange, right? That you like hang out, you have the same group of friends, and you're like in those social events all the freaking time, and then you never really take that space to really connect.
Yeah.
And it's just like this superficial kind of conversation.
It's like, hi, how are you? What's going
It's
on?
like, oh yeah, it's cool. Okay, bye.
Yeah, cool. It's like, I know you're a cool guy. We've got the same friends. They're cool guys. I know you are. It's just a fact. They wouldn't like you otherwise. No. Yeah, it's weird how that pans out. Yeah, the last time I saw you, you were like in deep conversation with Celine.
Yes.
That looked deep. It looks intense.
Yes.
I've got to ask you, what were you talking about?
That was in the dining room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
What
another
were we
like just,
talking-
how you doing, Sasha? How you doing? Bye. Yeah, see you later.
You know, like we were actually talking about we were having this online summit, and then we're like, okay, like it's kind of like the TED Talk thing, but what do you really do on those TED Talks? Like you want to share your wisdom, you want to share those things, but do we want to do this ourselves, kind of thing? And then we're like, okay, yeah, that would be cool, but what do we actually have to share? And then like, cause she went through her podcast, her TED Talk. So I just basically asked her about like her experience and like how did it all come together, like, you know, what was her vibe and her feeling about it. And I was just like trying to imagine myself, is that something that I want to do? You know, what is it that I want to share, kind of thing. And so yeah, we just dropped in.
Yeah.
You know.
It looked deep. It looked intense. You were getting it, and I was like, I know we're gonna have a good conversation at some point, man. I was like, I know those are the conversations I like to have, man.
They are the best.
Yeah, they are.
You know, talking about the weather and like, you know, what we do here, like, you know, so what do you do? It's like, that's boring.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm not really big on small talk. I'm really bad at it. I've kind of got like, I can do it for maybe 30 seconds tops. And then I'm just like, either we're going in something interesting or I'm just going to switch off and stop caring, you know?
So, and I have a question for you. What do you do in order to not jump into those small talk, superficial kind of conversations? How do you break that?
It kind of naturally happens.
Okay.
I very rarely end up in those really annoying conversations. And I also, I think I just end up being a bit rude sometimes. I can't help it. Sometimes I'm just, if I see it's not going anywhere, if I like lead on something, then I just kind of go, anyway, I'm going to shoot. I'll see you in a bit, and I just walk off. Matilda's just like, how do you do that? Like, you're just really good at just like setting a boundary and just leaving. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be rude. I just don't want to have this conversation.
And basically you're saving both of the, like everyone involved, like a lot of time.
Exactly.
Like you're not wasting your time on something that you don't want to be part of. And then it, like the other person is like, doesn't have to like deal with you if you're basically not really engaged and present.
Yeah, I mean, if I don't want to talk about the weather and you do want to talk about the weather, I'm probably not the right guy. There's probably about 10 different people here that are really going to love talking about that rain that we had for the last 2 weeks. I'm just not that one.
Totally.
It's about efficiency, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, German, don't tell me about it.
Well, you're actually late, so I'm horrifically
that.
surprised. You're
Come
actually
on.
letting down Germans everywhere right now. I've never known a German to be late.
It's really terrible, I know. And I honor being on time so much, and me being late is like, I think being late is such a disrespectful thing.
Yeah.
Like it's not valuing someone else's time. And then on top of it, not even saying like, hey, I'm going to, you know, things happen and you can't be on time. And then you just let them know, it's like, hey, look, I'll tell usually people like, I'm going to be 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
And now like you're texting me 15 minutes late, like, is everything okay? It's like, what is this guy talking about? And I was like, oh shit, the podcast is 2 hours earlier than I thought.
Well, I'm on the flip side of that. I'm always late. So I'm actually really
Interesting.
disrespectful, and I don't honour other people's time, clearly, and it's something I've really had to work on, because I just get so caught up in my own thing, and I always like which is selfish, I'm aware of, and it's something I'm really working on, because it's exactly what you said. I'm not honouring someone else's time, and especially now in the space that I'm working with people that have busy schedules, they have things they need to do, and the last thing they need is me being an arsehole and turning up really late just because I'm busy chatting after lunch, you know?
Yeah. This is one part, not honoring someone else's time, but there's another like underlying thing which basically says like, my time is more valuable than yours.
100%.
And that's such a dick move.
It is a dick move. You're basically saying I'm more important than you.
Yeah.
You're already setting the tone, but
Totally.
in a really shit way.
Yeah.
I know. So I'm working really hard not to set that tone because I don't think I'm better than everyone else. I just happen to behave like I do sometimes by accident. But it's a work in progress, man.
Yeah. I have that with my clients actually sometimes. And they're getting so caught up in, their own little world that they forget everything else around them. Like, it's so crazy. If I have coaching clients, they pay me a good amount of money every single hour and they're not showing up at all sometimes. I'm like, why would you just skip a $500 meeting? Basically. You know?
I get it. I totally get it.
And they don't even have an explanation for that.
Yeah. It is a really weird thing. I think as humans we have this tendency to get so wrapped up in our own worlds, and so something I always practice. Me and Matilda, we always do this morning gratitude, and I think it really helps me unbalance that, because what I find is I get so sucked into all the busyness of what's going on. Just having that little moment to drop in and have that moment of gratitude for very simple things allows me to have a little bit of perspective about everything that's going on, because we pay so little attention to everything that's in our field,
Right.
It's really weird. When you say you work with your clients, tell me a little bit more about what you do with your clients.
So I'm a business and relationship confidence coach for women.
Yeah.
I only work with women. It's nothing that I chose to, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It's just what naturally happened.
I mean, if I was a woman, I'd hire you too, mate.
Bro, I was resisting this for so long. No, I'm not going to be, especially here in Bali, everyone is a coach. Everyone is a life coach, whatever. I was like, no, I'm not going to be one of those guys. This is just not me. No way. So I was resisting it for a long time. I was like, no. But it always came back to me, and it started with friends, it started with colleagues, and then sooner or later it turned into paying clients.
Yeah.
And so what I basically do is you talked about boundaries, which I think is a big one. So I talk a lot about that, because often there's a lot of clarity lacking there. They're not really sure about their values. They're not having any boundaries and business etiquette in their businesses, because they're basically usually all entrepreneurs themselves, and they're pretty chaotic often. They have such a gift and the passion and the drive and everything else, but then the masculine part of integrating the structure and the systems, and that's just lacking often.
Yeah.
And helping them to create those systems is a pretty big one, and helping them to understand the importance of the masculine and the feminine, and integrating the different aspects is important.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I do. The combination of relationship with themselves mostly, and business.
That's really interesting. So I've, similar to you, I had massive resistance to the whole coaching space as well, because I was just I don't want to be one of those guys. I don't want to be a life coach. Who are you to fucking tell me how to live? You don't know shit. That's kind of where I was at.
Yeah.
Very arrogant, I know. But now I get it. And people have been coming to me for coaching, because obviously the space that I'm in, I do a lot of the mindset talks for Platinum, etc. And it's actually something I've done my whole life anyway. And I enjoy dropping in with people and trying to share a different perspective on their reality. It's an enjoyable experience. It's kind of like a bit of jousting going on. You're just playing around with ideas, and then you can kind of help someone get to a different point of view. And there's huge power in that.
Yeah.
Something I never really got because of the whole life coaching thing, And now I'm moving into that space, and it's just and it's really fulfilling. It's really, really powerful being able to help someone in that way. I'd love to know how you ended up in that space for women, particularly, because I've met a lot of coaches here in Bali, but I've not met one man that is a relationship coach for women, and you probably have a powerful perspective there.
I face that question actually a lot. How can you as a guy coach women? You don't understand women and this and that. It's well, I do understand them, but there's a much bigger reason behind it, is because I'm coming from a totally different perspective and angle.
You do understand men.
Of course.
Yeah.
As well. And that's we want to understand the other part of us. If I'm a man, I want to understand women. If I'm a woman, I want to understand men too, what's going on there. So I have a bigger picture of the whole thing. So at a very young age, actually, I understood, and I actually wrote about this in my book that I'm going to publish soon. I think I was 7 years old. I was I'm not going to school anymore. I don't need school. I had one of those, I'm going to talk to my parents and tell them there are other more important things for me to do.
You're
And
7.
Huh?
You're 7.
I was 7.
Okay.
Yeah. And my dad was like, super playful and whatnot, and like basically made me understand, like, look, you got to go to school. Like, I'm going to work, you go to school. But they had like a very like buddy kind of approach. My mom was different. She was like way more straightforward and direct. Like, no, there's certain responsibilities. Like, you got to just have to do that. And then I realized both of their perspectives were equally valid, but so different. But the underlying message behind it was still more or less the same. But the approach, how they came to me with it, was very different. So then I realized, okay, there's something here for me. Like, I have my perspective, and then I have another guy, my dad's perspective. But then there's a totally different angle, which really actually got to me, was my mom's perspective, a female perspective. And then whenever I have some sort of problem, issue, or something that I want to figure out, I knew, like, I want to look at this whole thing from all different angles and perspectives that are out there. Otherwise, how am I supposed to make a proper decision what it is, like, how do I want to move forward from this? And then I knew, like, okay, I'm always going to consider a female perspective. I'm going to ask for it, and I want to integrate that before I actually make a decision how I want to move forward.
You're making me feel like a pretty inadequate 7-year-old right now, I've got to say. I was not having any of those thoughts. I was running around pulling on my dick when I was 7. I had no idea what was going on. Jesus. On a serious note, though, that's absolutely huge. I feel like that is a big power in really good relationships. When you have a solid relationship, and it's only recently in my current relationship that I understood like why they say behind every strong man is a strong woman.
Stronger woman.
There we go. So I stand corrected.
Matilda, did you hear that? I said stronger woman.
God, I'm getting emasculated on my own podcast. This is painful. This is a painful place. Thanks, Sascha, mate. Nice one. But yeah, and it's because they have a perspective that we just fail to see. I've on so many different occasions I'm ploughing forward in a certain direction, and there's just that little voice in the sidelines that goes, yeah, "If you considered this, maybe," and then you're just like, "Fuck." And it's like, it's only when you get your ego out of the way, which is something I never was able to do in past relationships. Now, obviously, I've done plenty of work.
Yeah.
But when you take that on board and you have that capacity, it can really change the trajectory of your life, right?
Totally.
So that's where you are. You are that voice now for women.
I guess so.
Yeah.
It's just like, opening up that box of Pandora and like giving, in this case, women a opportunity to look at something from a very different perspective that they probably would never think about because they're just not a male. Yeah. They're just not a man. The same how I'm not a woman. But when you work with a lot of women and you have them around you, then you understand that more and more and more. Yeah. And I would never say like I completely understand women. Hell no. That will never be the case. And I don't want to, because that also keeps that curiosity and that mystery alive, which is good because that always keeps us in the sense of like continuous growth and learning.
Yeah, totally. I really love that perspective on it. I really love that. So what would you say is something that regularly comes up when you're coaching a woman in relationships? Where is an area that your insights are particularly valuable?
2 main ones. One we discussed a little bit before is like the chaos in their businesses. Yeah. Not having systems and structures, basically the masculine side of things. Yeah. It fell a little bit overboard, so it was never really properly implemented. So then, like once and that as like being an entrepreneur yourself, like once you're so deep in it, you kind of have a hard time seeing that have that bird's eye view, right? Mm-hmm. And just giving that perspective. And the other one is like maybe a little bit stereotyped, but I'm always attracting the one type of man in my life. I was like, okay, why do you think that is? Yeah, I don't know. There just no good men around. Like that in itself is obviously a massive limiting belief. Yeah. But the bigger thing behind it is like, okay, what do you really value? What's really important to you? And then we go through this whole process of like unpacking like what is actually behind that, and then are they actually acting in alignment with those? And often they don't. They're like, I don't want an emotionally unavailable man. But then like all they're attracting are like unemotional men. And instead of having this evaluation in the very beginning, it's like, is he emotionally unavailable? Or is he available? He's not, but still we continue to pursue that kind of guy. Like this hunting, like we as men have a lot as well. Like we're like, if we don't get something right away, we start hunting. Yeah. And a different way, like you would use different words, but it's the same thing for women. Because like we don't want to feel rejected. But it's more like if you really stay in your power and you have your boundaries and you know like what's a yes and what's a no, then you can act accordingly. But if you don't even know what are your boundaries and what are your non-negotiables and red flags, it's hard to act in alignment with those.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah.
I think that's something that gets crossed over a lot. I realised myself, like boundaries was the thing, because I've always just kind of been quite free-spirited. I just kind of go with the flow. I do this, I do that, and then I'd find myself sometimes it would just be little things. I'll just go for lunch when I'm not even really that hungry. I'm just kind of going along for the sake of going along.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I doing that? I don't want to eat. There's other things that I'd rather be doing, but I feel like it's almost like maybe like a fear of missing out thing. So I'm just going to go along with it. And I just started to pick apart all these different areas of my life where I just do these things and go with them for no particular reason. And then as soon as I started just going, nah, I don't really want to do that anymore, or just like refusing to meet up, or just not replying to people. That's actually something I do now. Like sometimes I just don't reply on WhatsApp. And it was hard for me. I felt
That's
like a
so rude.
responsibility. I know, but sometimes I'm just like, I haven't got the time or the capacity to deal with this message. If it's like it's an example what we spoke about before, it'd be a small talk conversation. Hi, how are you doing? And I'm just like, I don't even know how to reply to that message, really. Yeah. Like if we jump on a call or that's that.
Yeah.
And I'm getting so much better now at just kind of going, nah, just not going to deal with that anymore.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to people that are kind of struggling with setting their own boundaries?
I love and I embrace saying no. And the reason for that is like, one, it gives you power because you're acting in alignment with like what's really important to you. And two, once you understand and learn, like if I say no to someone else, then ultimately I say yes to myself. If I'm like a people pleaser and I always say yes to everyone else, I'm kind of rejecting my own desires and my own like needs and and I'm basically saying no to myself. Like, do I really want to say no to myself and say yes to you if I really don't want to do that? Not really.
Yeah, totally.
And it's hard because like you kind of you have that fear of like you're ending up in uncomfortable conversations, right? Which is a whole another topic, how to address those kind of things. But just the fact that I don't want to like make someone feel unheard or seen and like I'm disappointed and upset them, is like we tend to say yes, even though like our gut says like no, I really don't want to do that. But I'm facing this like fear and this like obstacle, like, but when I say no, what am I going to face in exchange? And I think if I'm like giving someone my honest truth and it's like, no, I really don't feel that right now, then I'm acting from a place of love and truth. And this thing that we said before is I'm ultimately putting myself in a position to honor someone else's time as well. Because if I don't want to do that and I'm not really present with them, why the fuck do we do this here in the first place? So, it's like I'll allow someone else to be in their truth if I'm doing it myself. Otherwise, like, we're just having a fake kind of conversation here. And
it's a waste of everyone's time, right?
Exactly.
It's pointless. It's really interesting to say that. It's kind of like this kind of habit-breaking process, I see it, because I think we're all so conditioned because we just take the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And so we just say yes to stuff, whether it's aligned or whether it's not. And there's real power in just saying no. I'm quite happy with that. The thing was always weird for me because I would find that I'd agree to do stuff, but I've never been worried about having uncomfortable conversations. I'm more than happy to tell someone how I feel, whether they like it or not, but I'd still find myself just doing shit that I didn't really want to do. What do you think is the biggest cause of that, if it's not the fear of uncomfortable conversations?
Well, I think there's a little bit of fear of an uncomfortable conversation.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest.
All right.
Because otherwise, like, if you really don't feel that and there's not, like, maybe not necessarily fear, but almost you don't want to make someone else feel disappointed. And, not putting them in a position that they feel, like, rejected, which comes from being a people pleaser.
Yeah. Interesting.
And, but understanding, like, being a people pleaser is ultimately hurting the other person so much more. And hurting yourself if you actually don't want to do that. If you don't want to have that conversation, if you don't want to go there and like, have lunch or whatever, and you don't want to make that business deal, and you still kind of like do it because you somewhat said yes already, and you just like follow through, even just not in alignment.
Interesting. Gonna have to make some assessments there. I'd never do it on business, but definitely do it on like personal arrangements.
So what's the difference
between
business and personal stuff then?
I suppose, well, business, I'm kind of thinking, if I don't want to do something, that's probably because it's bad business for me, so I'm not going to do it. That's one thing. If it's personal, then I'm just thinking, I've agreed to do this. It doesn't really cost me much, so I'm going to go do it. And I'm kind of like that. But I definitely agree with your point. There is an element of people pleasing there still, because even though I'm not concerned to have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody, there's still a part of me that doesn't want to let that person down. I think. Interesting. I'm gonna have to look back into my relationship with my mother and my father and work out where they came from.
We're going there right now.
We're going there. But am I scared of disappointing my mum and dad? Is this where we're at? That's really interesting. I like that. I like how you framed that. I like you called me out as well, because I kind of I've definitely fallen into that trap of just thinking, I'm not bothered.
And to be perfectly honest, if I ask someone, for a favor, or I want to do something and they say no, for whatever kind of reason, doesn't really matter. I respect them even more, because they speak their truth. They really don't want to do it. They don't feel it, or whatever it is. Like, I actually have more respect from them if they say yes and we're going along, and then I feel like they're not really there, like mentally, energetically. It's just like this, like you can play along, but ultimately you're like putting on a mask and you're faking this whole thing. Like, I have so much less respect for that, instead of just saying plain and simply into my face, I don't like it. I don't like what you did. Like, and they're calling me out. I appreciate them even more.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not interested. I'm very much on this journey of elevating my consciousness, and I feel like this is a term that's used in a kind of woo-woo kind of sense, but I look at it from like a scientific point of view. I'm conscious right now of this conversation. I'm aware of what's going on, but there's a large portion of the conversation that I'm not aware of, because it's all to do with conditioning and all these different things. When I say I'm trying to elevate my consciousness, I just mean that I'm trying to be more aware of everything that's going on in the world and why it's happening.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do. So how do you do that? You dig into what are these autonomous processes, your subconscious, that is getting you to do shit that you're not even aware of, right?
Yeah, totally.
I love digging into that, and that's where you get to a stronger place of authenticity, like what you're talking about here. When did you? So obviously you had the realization when you were 7.
Well, I mean,
but
like,
there must have been
not in the way how I look at it now.
I'm sure.
Right?
I mean, I'd be really, really, really impressed if you did. So how did that look? So you kind of got that first kind of taste for the different points of view and different perspectives on the same reality.
Yeah.
How did that then develop over time?
The biggest thing for me is I just observed my parents, how they interact with each other. Because I grew up in this like fairy tale kind of childhood. Like, and to be perfectly honest, I haven't really talked about this much in the past. Because usually if you tell someone like, I had a childhood which was just like basically perfect, no fights. I cannot remember any fight with my parents, and this is like no joke. Like, if there was some sort of disagreement, we literally sit on a table and we talk about it.
Beautiful.
So the respect that my mom had for herself, and the way how she wanted to be treated by my dad, and vice versa, and therefore the way how they engaged with each other, I as a little kid was obviously observing and taking all that in. And then the intentionality that they had how to raise me, which was just with love. They was like, oh, we're going to make like a shitload of mistakes like raising you. We didn't read any books. We didn't like ask a bunch of friends like how to raise a child and all that kind of stuff. We just like set this one intention. We want to raise you with love. So whatever we're going to do is like, it doesn't really matter, because it's going to be fine, because we believe in that one thing, and just me growing up in that and like observing my mom, how she really like treated herself, and like called my dad out, and like all that was just the stepping stone for me to understand this on a deeper level.
I love that, and I love that you talk about it like that. I think nowadays there's too much of a call to have had this destructive, like messed up past to justify having any value to give in the future. And I think coming from that space, there's huge value in that. You actually get to see firsthand how it should be done.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful that you recognize that it's a real privileged place to be. It's really, really beautiful.
Even bigger though, my parents didn't have that kind of relationship in childhood when they grew up.
Really?
My dad's father died when he was like, I think 17. Mm-hmm. They both left the house when they were 14 because they were athletes in east of Germany. So they just like, went to a school somewhere else. So they didn't have, whatever they gave me, they didn't have that themselves. They literally set that intention and like went into this with like a very conscious choice, which is, I think, the most beautiful part, because that showed me like the power that we have, how we want to raise ourselves and treat others. If we do that with love, we can have a massive impact on another person.
Totally. And it's the power to rewrite things as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
What you touched on there is brilliant, because it's I see that as simplification.
Mm-hmm.
we all get very confused and distracted by all these different moving parts, but you can just zero in on something and just go, okay, we're going to focus on love right now, and then all the other stuff that happens around it doesn't matter because we've got our main focus.
Yeah.
And I think it's very similar with doing the right thing. I think I've made loads of mistakes in my life. A lot of the time I was trying to manipulate and control all these different outcomes, and it killed me trying to do it. But if you just act from a place of integrity and you just do the right thing, which is by doing the right thing by yourself and by other people, you don't really have to worry about the rest of the noise. Everything else becomes very, very straightforward, right? That's pretty much what being in alignment is, right?
Yeah.
No.
It's like what I always talk about is, I know, like, if I'm going to be rude and hard to you, like, and I say things I know, like, oh, you're going to be hurt by it, but it's like speaking my truth, and I do that with an intention of like, no, actually, all I'm doing here is like basically with Yogi Lab, we have this one simple rule is like, we call it tough love. It's probably better to explain it this way. It's like, we call each other out all the fucking time, and like, conversations get heated and emotional at times, you know. But we do, and we know, like, we can do that because we know we always come from a place of love and like respecting and treating each other with that honor, like we're family, you know. And if you know, like, someone calls me out, but I know like they're doing this in order to help me and help us, then I'm not taking it so personally. I might still be offended for a second, but like looking a little bit behind that is like, okay, I get what's going on here, you know. It's just like helping and loving each other and becoming a better human being ultimately.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
There's no other way, is there? I had a conversation like this in our company. I was like, everybody has to be open to criticism. Everyone has to be able to take feedback, because I feel like so many people are in a space where they feel very fragile and they're not willing to accept that. And there's obviously, we can talk about all the different reasons that may be. That's probably a really long conversation. But if we can just fast track to the point where you can take on feedback from other people, and I would say a real good way to do that is have the understanding that you have each other's best interests at heart.
Yeah.
That's how you evolve and grow. You get that feedback from your environment that says, oh no, you could do this better. Oh, you could be better, you know? Yeah. There's huge power in that. I love what you guys are doing. Like, that's why you got an epic team, right?
And this is what I learned actually when I was a professional basketball player back in the days.
You kept that one quiet, Sascha, you know?
About that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like when I was, you know, my teenager years, I was playing for Germany, like, you know, European championships. My whole life was dedicated to basketball. And if you play in a team, like, there's so many things that you can learn and you have to learn. Criticism is one of the big ones, because otherwise, how are you going to get better on the court if you're not able to take criticism in order to like do things in a better way for the team or individually, in order to defend someone better, or like, you know, do more shots and all that kind of stuff. So like I learned so much from playing basketball and playing team sports, you know, like winning and losing is like one of the big ones. Accepting that. Time management, dedication, sacrifices, like there's so much in there, and I'm just applying it into like my real world and my business as well.
Yeah, I was listening, I think it was Jordan Peterson the other day, and he was just talking about it's all just, everything we do is just a different variation of a game. From an early age, they're just games. There's a set objective, there's a consensus about what the objective is. Everybody works towards that objective, and then we all just play the game.
Yeah.
If you play the game well, you win. There's success. Everyone's happy. Social status, etc. You know.
Yeah.
And it's the same whether it be business or a relationship. There's just a set goal. This is the game we're playing together. We agree upon the rules. And it's when there's no agreement upon the rules that there seems to be a hell of a lot of problems, right?
Exactly.
Basketball, I'm sure it would get very confusing if no one was clear on what the actual rules are, right?
10 guys running around on the court and not having any rules, like, that's a mess.
Yeah, you can shoot whatever direction you want, you can hit who you want, some people can punch people, some people can't. It gets a little bit confusing. And this is the game I think people play in relationships. I think people are unsure what the rules of the game are because nobody sets them out.
Okay, and why is that? Okay, you basically just said it. It's like the lack of communication.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Communication is everything. I need to know that what I think is the right thing to do, what I'm aiming towards, where do I see the relationship going. If you don't agree on that, then you're playing by different rules.
Yeah.
Right? How do you break this process down for people when you're working? So you say you're working with a girl who's in a relationship and she's trying to get somewhere with a particular guy. How do you break these concepts down?
My first question would be like, do you communicate with him? It's like, yeah, of course, you know. And it's like, yeah, but like, do you actually have like the container to be able to properly, honestly connect and have conversations with him?
I'd love to pause you there just quickly. When you say create the container, can you clarify for people what that means, what that looks like?
I actually integrated that with like one of my clients just recently, and they have an open and honest container with each other and they're communicating. But like what, for example, they didn't do, and this one simple practice can help a lot, is like once a week you sit in front of each other and I just speak for 5 minutes. You don't do anything else but listening, you know, the active listening kind of part. And I know, you know, that you've done like different Tantra kind of workshops and stuff, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
So me in a position to just being able to express whatever is there, I can scream at you, I can do whatever I need to express, and you've been an asshole here and like this and that. That's like me just being able to fully voice myself. Knowing the reason why we do that is like, we just want to be in a place with each other that we can actually really express our like true self. And you don't do anything. You're not even responding to it. And then it's your turn. And then you do that. And I'm in a position to just like observe and give you that space to really do that. And you open up that container with, okay, we're doing this practice for this one simple reason, like basically getting to know each other on a deeper level. And then if you want to go deeper, it's like you express whatever you need to express. And I was like, okay, what I was hearing, like, thank you for sharing this. What I was hearing is this and that. And then you say, yes, okay, that's exactly what I said. Or, no, actually, this is not really what I wanted to express. Give me another chance to go a little bit deeper, because obviously then you realize the lack of understanding is we're not communicating clearly with each other. So we need to clarify even more. But if I'm assuming this is what you said and I'm not expressing, giving you a chance to really like, did this guy really understand what I was trying to say?
Yeah.
You ultimately end up in a bunch of misunderstandings. And I believe like, you know, words and like verbal communication is like the biggest tool of communication. But it's also the one that's the most misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because we're all looking through everything through our own filters and like, you know, past trauma and like everything that happened in our lives. And you say like blue and I hear, yes, I hear blue, but like you meant something completely different than what I understood.
Yeah. I love that point, because I always look at the way I look at this one, with communication, because I've had it so many times. Everyone can probably relate to being in a relationship. Things get heated, emotions get involved. Now you're arguing. Nobody's listening. Everyone's just shouting their point of view, and no one actually understands what the other person's saying. So I always think of it, if we're starting at point A and we're going to point B, there's all this space in the middle. Now, every time I slightly misunderstand what you're saying, I'm going like 5 degrees the wrong way.
Yeah.
Now I do it again. I say another statement. I go 5 degrees the wrong way again, and then 5 degrees again the wrong way. And then by the end of it, we've done this 20 or 30 times, because everyone knows what it's like in a heated argument. You're saying this happened, and then last year you did this, and then 2 weeks ago you did that. Before you know it, B's here, A's there, and you're somewhere over here. Nobody knows what's going on. Everyone's confused. So it's all about creating that clear straight line, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I when that kind of set for me, when I realize how often we don't actually understand what the other person's saying, even though we think we do, I realize how obvious it was that all of my relationships have been a shower shit. Mm-hmm. Made so much sense.
Yeah.
I needed you, man. Where were you helping me with these things? I had to work out. I needed 7-year-old Sascha to come in and just go, Joe, mate, look, what you need is a couple of different perspectives. You need to communicate a little bit better.
Just start listening. You know, like, don't put your own like projection, like everything that I hear, and I'm immediately like, without you even finishing your sentence, if I'm like starting to like find my way how to respond to it, then I don't even fully understand like what you're talking about, because I'm like already in my own thoughts, like, what's my response? How am I gonna like deal with that attack or whatever it is?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily even an attack. It's just like me voicing like, this is how I feel. This is what's going on inside of me. Mm. You know, and that understanding a lot of people just don't have. And you find that in business too. Yeah. You know, she is like having a bunch of issues with this one particular staff member, one of her employees. And she's like, if this is going to continue, I'm going to fire him. I was like, okay. Is he a valuable asset to your company? Yeah, definitely, 100%. And then turns out like he is not responding her in her authority and wanting to get things done the way how she wants to get them done in her company. So there's like a lot of ego involved, but then at the same time, they're not communicating with her. So basically what I shared with you, I basically gave her the same thing to do that with him.
Yeah.
So they kind of can like get on the table and like, okay, this is here. Like, we know we love each other. We know we need each other. We want to work together. But the way how it's going to work out right now is like, I'm going to fire you. And I don't want to. So we need to get on the same page.
Yeah, I love that. I always think, me and AJ talked about this actually. We're talking about the parallels between business and relationships. They're so similar.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
like what you described there, what I heard you say. So there's good communication here. This is what I'm hearing from you. I heard you're talking about creating the container again. Like in the same way with the relationship. Like, I love you. I want this relationship to work. This, I need to say how I feel, etc. In the business relationship, you're saying, look, I want this business relationship to work. I don't want to have to sack you, but we're going to head in a bad direction. Let's kind of come to an understanding here. So you've set the space, right? So what happened? So, because I didn't finish my last question. We got on a tangent, which I love, by the way. But so when you're working with somebody, we can actually, rather than just be in a relationship, be business or a relationship. Now we'll cover.
They're all
both.
relationships.
We'll do it all.
Right?
We'll do it all. We got it covered.
Yeah.
So basically, if you listen to the podcast right now, you're in business or you have relationships with anybody, this is helping you.
Yeah.
So you create the container, you open a space for clear communication. Now what's the next stage?
You integrate, like, one, you need to start integrating whatever the other person said. Like, it's not just having this like blank page and this is what I'm going to write on it and the other person just has to agree. That's not the way how it works. You basically have to come to an agreement. Like, what are the things that you need? What are the things that I need? How can we like make that a thing that we can actually work with each other? And then you like actually need to start integrating that. And also like calling each other out. I told like, look, if you tell him those are the things that you want to get done in this kind of way, and he continues he's not doing those things, even though he says, okay, I'm going to do that, and he knows and whatnot, then you need to be able to call him out. So in that container, when you have the conversation, you're saying, what is a good way for me to address that you don't feel personally offended, and you understand where I'm coming from? I want to find a way that we actually can work with each other, and we have the same goal. We want the best for the company, right?
Yeah.
And we want to have a good time while we work together. So how can we make that work? And then I ask you, like, how's that going to look like? And whatever you tell me, obviously I have the responsibility. Whenever that thing comes up, I need to integrate that and communicate and practice it in the way how we said. And then we evaluate it again. It's like, did that actually work? And if not, okay, what can we change? How do we need to change it?
I'm hearing again, I'm just kind of getting that vibe, just setting the rules of the game again, isn't it? It's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do to get what I need. How can you receive that in a way that doesn't piss you off and make you want to punch me?
Yeah.
It's that simple, right? Clear
It
rules.
can be that simple, you know? It's like our own ego and our emotions and our like feeling personally attacked and hurt that gets into the way.
How do you get people to shift from, I always call this, it's a you problem. Like there's two different ways you can go about it. You can either take responsibility at all times, which is like something I try and live by. I try and always look at whatever's going on, what could I have done better? Because then at least I have power over the situation. I find a lot of people, before they come to that realization, it's a you problem. You're doing this to me. How do you get people to transition into a place of ownership, especially when they're feeling offended?
I want to bring up this book, Leadership and Self-Deception. Have you read that?
I haven't.
It's a dope book. We just read it with the Yoga Lab team a few weeks ago. It's absolutely powerful because what it says is like, you're in your box and I'm basically responding and acting from that box that I'm in. But the understanding, like, you're in a box too, and trying to put myself into that box, how is that going to look like? How did I act? Like, if I'm you right now and you get pissed and offended by the things that I did, it's like, well, if I put myself into, like, how would I receive that? And what you said, like, what could I have done better? You know, which is not so much as what I could have done better. Like, why did you do the things that you do? You did it not according to the system for whatever kind of reasons. And I'm like calling you out, I'm getting mad and all those kind of things. But I never really even question, why didn't you do those things in a different way? So I feel like there's a big part of like putting myself into the other position and looking at it from their perspective. Just that in itself gives me an opportunity to take more accountability for myself because I'm not just so self-centered in everything that I do. It gives me a little bit more of an objective point of view.
So I like that. It's like an additional layer to it, isn't it? It's that you've got you can take responsibility, but let's take it a step further and actually put ourselves in the other person's shoes as well.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that only comes from having that container. You know that everybody has the shared goal. You know that everybody has everybody else's best interests at heart. So that must make a real beautiful place to do that. You said that we read it as a team. Do you have like a reading list or something that you all do as a team? Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. I love that. Absolutely.
Well, basically, like we pick a book. Right now, we just started listening to Existential Kink.
Yeah.
And I just started on the way coming here, basically, with that book. So, like, we always pick a book that we either listen to or we actually read it. And it's like, okay, 2 chapters a week, 5 chapters a week. You know, like 1 hour, like, of that Audible book we're going to read together, more or less. Not like we're in the same room, but we're making sure, okay, this is going to get done, and then we talk about it. And everything is, like, connected to personal growth and communication and, you know, business and all that kind of stuff. Because that's, like, you know, we're growth junkies in our own way. We want to become a better, more capable human being and then share it with the rest of the world. Yeah. So you got to do the work yourself too.
100%.
Right? And I think that's so powerful because you're also like creating a bunch of layers where you learn something, you integrate it, but then you also share and reflect as a team on it. Because like if I'm reading something, I still have a little bit of my own perspective on those things. But then I hear like 3, 4, 5 other people reading the same thing, learning other aspects of it too. And that sharing is like, it's super enriching.
I love that. In fact, I want to implement that as a team here at Platinum. I hope you guys are listening to this, Platinum University crew. Are you paying attention right now?
I hope you guys are readers.
Oh, God.
I'm not. So it's a little bit of a stretch for me, to be perfectly honest, because I'm not a big reader. But this way, because especially if you do it as a collective, it's powerful.
Yeah, it's that perspective thing, isn't it? I mean, I'm a bit of a reader. I'm pretty obsessed with books and audiobooks. But I think just having somebody else's perspective can be huge. Yeah. And just sharing that point of view, like what do they say? Like when you learn something twice. So when you teach something, you learn it twice. Yeah. So like if you kind of say what you've taken from it, you're really going to embed that in your own psyche, as well as giving some value to somebody else. And then you can all just kind of spin around and create a whirlwind of knowledge. I love that. That's really, really powerful. What other, as a team, because I love the Yogi Lab team. I think you're all brilliant. You're all amazing dudes. And you're on an epic journey together. What other things do you do as a team that really kind of help you all elevate each other? So you've touched on the accountability piece where you call each other out always. You've got this kind of self-development circle that you've got going on. What other things do you guys do?
Spiritual practices, you know, and that obviously looks a little bit different for each and every one, but like from meditation to breathwork to yoga to like, you know, even going into the gym can be like a spiritual practice in itself. Just integrating those things in order to have a little bit more of like a balanced core kind of being is super important and powerful. Yeah. Then, yeah, we're all walking towards the same goal, which is those 80 million meditators that we want to get. Yeah. And the Maharishi effect, which is pretty powerful. And for the people who don't know what that is, it's like the Maharishi effect is basically you take 1% of a specific area and they become seasoned meditators. They're meditating on a regular basis. They're just like integrating that kind of spiritual practice. In that specific area, and this is like by studies proven, that specific area, like life quality will increase and crime rates and like, you know, the negativity will decrease. Like there's statistics out there. And this goes from like small little districts to countries that has been tested. So we won't get 80 million meditators together because that means we're basically having 1% of the world population, which is obviously a massive big goal, and we believe we can do that. But the only way how we can do that is if we integrate those spiritual practices and the communication and the accountability and all those other things into our life and the reading and whatnot, because otherwise, like, how are you going to achieve those like big goals?
Well, if you don't get better, then the goals are unachievable, aren't they? I was reading something recently. They're talking about goal setting. They're saying like the biggest thing with goals is people set a really big goal, and then when they don't achieve it, they change the goal. Mm-hmm. They really don't. That's the first thing they look at doing, rather than thinking, what the hell could I have done better? How could I have changed myself in order to make the goal more achievable? And goals, progress is part of our being. It's literally it's a pillar of fulfillment. There is no such thing as an end destination realistically, because once you're there, you'll get bored and you want to do something new. So you have to be constantly progressing.
Totally.
So by its very nature, you want to set a goal that's pretty hard to do, that's exciting, that you have to constantly work towards. That's just how it is, isn't it? It's part of this. I think it's a fallacy of the human nature to think that that isn't how it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's a shame.
Yeah.
Wow.
With like dreams and goals, I think, you know, one, if you have a dream that's not scaring you, it's not big enough. And if you have a dream without a plan, it's still just a dream. Like, you got to put it into action. Otherwise, you're never going to achieve any kind of your goals and dreams.
Yeah.
And like, it took me a little while to fully understand that too, to be perfectly honest. Because like, when you're young, you know, if you look at like a 16-year-old Sascha, is like, oh, I want to do all those like amazing things and live this like lavish lifestyle and whatnot. But like, did I actually put things in place to properly like achieve those goals? No, not necessarily. And I think that's such a big thing right now that we also integrate is like, we have these goals and then you have a bunch of like smaller goals and like, you know, small little action steps, and then you just like climb up this ladder basically in order to achieve that goal.
I love that, man. I think it's a really good point to end on. I think you've given some absolutely insane value here. I think you're an amazing contribution to the Yogi Lab team. Like I've said it before, I love all you guys. I love what you guys are trying to do in the world. I love you all as individuals. I all think you're all really special human beings. I really appreciate you coming here. Can you tell people where they can find you, where they can hire you? Because if you're a woman right now in a relationship, I know you need some of Sascha's help. So everybody does.
The big thing for us, you know, Yogi Lab on Instagram, on the website, yogilab.com, or on Instagram, _yogi_lab. And, you know, me personally, you find on Sascha _Haert, AE, not EA. It's my real name. Can't do anything about that. And, you know, like, I'm super happy to be here. Like, I'm sorry for being late.
Don't apologise. Like, I honestly, I'm always late, as I said before, so I get it if people are late on me.
It was a good lesson for both of us, I guess.
Yeah.
And man, thank you for having me. Super appreciate it. And obviously, you know, all the love that you gave us, I can give it back to you guys too.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate your time.
This is the Platinum Podcast.